Are you tired of arguing? Maybe you're arguing with your partner, maybe your kids, friends, or even someone at work. All I know is you're tired of it and you want it to stop immediately. Well, today I'm going to show you a simple and effective tool that can take the steam out of your argument and help you build relationships that are based in trust and full of cooperation and intimacy. I'm Dr. Keisha Moore, and this is a focused insight on how to have effective trust building relationships. So the first thing that you have to do if you want to have healthy conversations and healthy relationships is learn how to own your part. You're responsible for what you bring to the conversation. You are not responsible for what the other person responds. Okay? So in owning your part, I want you to think about how the stories that you're telling to yourself are actually creating the conflict that you're experiencing in your conversations with another person. So what do I mean when I'm talking about stories? Well, stories are your unique perspective on the world. They're your assumptions, your beliefs, your attitudes, your ideas about yourself, about the world, about that other person, and about your situation. And there are important ways in which the stories that you are telling yourself are actually poised to create conflict in your relationships. Let me share two of them with you. The first is a psychological principle that's known as the fundamental attribution error. It basically means that whenever I do something that I consider to be wrong or that looks like a misdeed, well, for me, I understand that as situational, right? I'm late because it was so much traffic. You wouldn't believe it. But that's not my character, right? But when I understand your behavior, something that you've done that's wrong, I tend to attribute it to your character, not the situation. So you're late because you have poor time management skills, or because you don't value and respect me and my time. You see the difference? What happens to me whenever I do something wrong, it's because of the situation, but whenever you do something wrong, it's because of your character. And so because of that, we're likely to create stories that are inaccurate and that actually lead to conflict. Another thing that helps us understand how our stories create conflict in our relationships is what's known as our perceptual defense mechanism, which basically says that we're likely to pay attention to and notice things that are consistent with what we already believe to be true, and we're likely to discount and dismiss things that aren't consistent with what we know and believe to be true. So if I believe you don't respect me in my time, then anything that I see that's consistent with that, I'll pay attention to. It'll be at the forefront of my consciousness. And anything that I see that might counter that or might seem to be inconsistent with those beliefs, I'll ignore them or discount them. And often this happens without me even being conscious of it, right? So the question I want you to ask yourself is, are the stories that you're telling yourself right now serving you in your relationships, right? So if you're having conflict in the relationship, it's probably because you're telling a story that is not serving you. So let me share with you two kinds of stories that I often hear that people tell to themselves that doesn't serve them and it doesn't serve their relationships. So tell me if you've heard these things before, or maybe even if you've told these stories to yourself. The first one is, no one wants to hear what I have to say. It doesn't matter. This is a story that does not serve you. It encourages you to play small, to withhold your unique perspective and ideas. So in a business meeting, you might just, not even volunteer to provide any information, or perhaps in your relationship, you might not share things that make you unhappy or things that you really want because you think it doesn't matter, right? That is a story that is not serving you, and it's not serving your relationship. Another story that I hear often that does a disservice to us in our relationships is the idea that I'm responsible for how other people feel, right? It's my job to make sure that they're comfortable at all times. That is a story that is not serving you or your relationship. It also encourages you to play small, to not pay attention to your own feelings, your own thoughts, your own ideas for the purpose of keeping peace, right? So what you believe and what you think is important somehow becomes diminished because it might make someone else uncomfortable. So I want to show you how you can challenge these stories that aren't serving you and how you can replace them with new and better stories that actually help you and help your relationship. So the first thing to do in challenging stories that aren't serving you is you need to be able to separate fact from fiction. Remember, your stories are not true. They're just what you tell yourself. So if you're using words like always, never, those are already red flags. That's fiction. That's not fact. But when you write down your stories that you're telling yourself, then you can kind of detach from them and look at them and say, is this true? Is there any information that would contradict this or require me to amend what I've just said that I believe to be true? You'll be really surprised that oftentimes when you pay attention to your stories, you can see what is contradictory about that story or the ways in which that story is not true. So that's the first thing I encourage you is look at your stories and separate out fact from fiction. The second thing is I want you to create a new story that actually serves you better. The wonderful thing about stories and them being made up is that you can make it up to serve you and your relationship, right? So the stories that you currently believe are made up stories that are hurting your relationship. And I'm encouraging you to create some made up stories that will actually help you in your relationship. So let me give you some new stories that you could use in trying to improve your relationship. One is telling yourself, I can remain compassionate to other people's feelings without taking them on as my own. This will help you because it'll allow you to see yourself as a loving and compassionate person simply by listening to your friend or your partner or your child's pain without feeling the guilt or responsibility for fixing it, right? People don't want to be fixed, and oftentimes they actually have within them the means to address their problem, but what they want to do is to be heard. And so by telling yourself this new and better story, you allow yourself to feel good about yourself by listening and release yourself from this obligation to fix. Another story that you can tell yourself that will better serve you in your relationship is to say, my focus in our conversation is in listening and understanding that other person. And it's only by listening and understanding the other person that I'm able to exert real influence and that I'm able to build a quality relationship. So many times we tell ourselves the story that communication is all about what we have to say. This kind of one directional bombardment. That's not serving us. It makes the other person feel invisible and often resistant to what it is that we have to say. The way to exert real influence is through listening. So the last story that I want to share with you that might help you in your relationship is telling yourself, I approve of myself and accept myself already. I do not need the approval and acceptance of others. That's a powerful story that as you say that story to yourself and come to believe it, it will release a lot of the stress and anxiety in your conversations with people because you don't need for them to approve of your choices and accept your perspective of the world. You're only sharing it with them. You already accept it. So I want you to consider, what are some of the false stories that you're telling yourself today that are hurting your conversations and hurting your relationships? And more importantly, I want you to ask yourself, what are some new and better stories that you can tell yourself that will improve your relationship and help you to build the kind of trust and cooperation and connection that you desire? Please like this video, comment below with any comments or questions that you have about the topic. Please subscribe to this channel so that I can share with you even more of these focus insights, these nuggets of wisdom that I've created to help you live the life that you desire. Finally, if you want some more support and some more tools that might help you in building better relationships and improving other areas of your life, I encourage you to visit and subscribe to my blog, Living From Your Bliss. So the blog's available on my website, which is www.yourlifeinfocuscoach.com. You can also connect with me via Facebook. I'd love to meet you and have conversations with you about how you're improving your relationships and improving your life through changing your stories. So, I'm Dr. Keisha Moore of Life in Focus Coaching, and I am wishing you a life full of meaning, purpose, and joy. Have a good day.